Hi Ian, how are you?
Good evening, Mark. I'm well. You're looking
Good.
surprisingly well in your video.
Well, I got some lights, haven't I? I got some studio lights, and I kind of it's a bit like when you get a chance to buy gadgets, like doing up your studio. It kind of gives you an opportunity to spend stuff on things you
You
probably
look
shouldn't be spending things.
healthy. You look healthy. Um, and you sound good.
What now?
And
I'm
it's
going to
not fair
become
this because you've invested in a really nice setup, haven't you? So you look tanned and healthy, and I look pale and unhealthy. And also, my audio is not as good, so I've got a wispy voice that isn't very clear, and also I look like I've not been outside for 6 months.
well. There's motivation for you, isn't there? It's like it's like this morning I got up and I was like looking at myself in the mirror. I was like, oh my god, I'm going to be on camera. I better do my hair and take my pajamas off and put some clothes on. And normally you can do whatever you want, but
Are you
not
trying
with
to take the
video.
Hammersley Brothers podcast up to the next level?
Yeah. Look, I've even got a
Wow.
blue light. Look, if you look slightly down underneath the sofa down there, for the people listening in audio, this is going to be very interesting. But there's a little blue light down there just for effect. Yeah.
Why? What is it supposed to do?
I don't know. Just, I was like, it was one of the things you could buy. I was like, well, who
Oh,
doesn't want blue lights underneath the sofa? You know, that's what you get.
nice.
Yeah, yeah. Anyway, what
That's
are we going to
cool.
talk about, Ian?
We are going to talk about the six dominoes of e-commerce.
Well, we're only going to talk about one of them today, to be honest, because we're going to do
We,
six
yeah.
podcasts, split them up into six,
Oh,
and we're
that's
going to
true.
cover the first one. But why don't you go through
Yeah. Yeah.
what the
So,
dominoes are,
okay.
and also, hang on a minute, we should also explain what they're for,
Where?
because
Yeah.
and where they came from and what they do.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll take that. I'll take that. You can obviously talk and interject and things, but the six dominoes came about. I think they're actually a, a development upon our original thinking of conversion rate. And when we first started talking about conversion rate a long time ago, we always broke it down into the three sections: add to basket, basket to checkout, checkout to order. And there'd be a time that's fine from a mathematical perspective, looking at how does your add to basket compare against the benchmark? We always used to say, figures like 10% add to basket, things like that. But actually, when you're practically trying to increase the conversion rate, a customer or an e-commerce buyer doesn't buy mathematically, they buy emotionally, they buy psychologically. And so if you're trying to increase the conversion rate, you have to understand, yes, where they land and what device they're on and what page popular pages are, but also from a psychological perspective, where are they at that time in that buying journey? And those six dominoes of e-commerce are purely psychological dominoes, and they take you through really trying to align your e-commerce brand with where the customer is mentally and at what stage they're at. Um, would that be fair to say? It's purely a conversion
Yeah,
play.
and I think
Yeah,
I kind of know where it came from now, because we did some extra work you did the keynote for MailChimp
yeah.
in London, that one where you were with Louis Theroux and all those other famous people, and then there was you.
Louis
And
Theroux, not Louis Theroux. I mean, get it.
however,
I mean, we're close friends now. I mean, he
that's
walked
true.
past me in the backstage, and he glanced at me. So
Well,
I'd say that's
I'm
close
surprised
friends.
he's going to invite you to his son's christening and whatever.
Yeah.
Um, so at that time, I started doing a lot of work on um, the kind of next evolution of conversion rate optimization, which was how the page is unwrapped to the buyer or the prospective buyer when they look at it. And they don't look at everything first. So like a kind of stark analysis of this, or example of this is probably better to say, is when the customer lands on the website and the first thing they see is free delivery. And you're banging on about free delivery. Now, that is only important if they're pretty much convinced that they're going to buy from you And if they aren't, so if I'm selling you like some garden furniture, some expensive garden furniture, and I see the first thing that's being told to me is free delivery. Like, I don't care whether it's free delivery or not yet,
You're
because
not
I don't
there
know whether.
yet.
Well, I'm not there
Yeah.
yet, and so there is a story of and a path of how the product page is looked at when someone lands on it and they see things in a certain order or within a similar order, and certain things are more important first. And so from that came the dominoes, the dominoes. And
Yeah.
the dominoes was a visual representation and a metaphor for uncovering the conversion rate and understanding how your customers are seeing it and where you might be stopping them from buying.
Yeah.
So today we wanted to cover the first one of the dominoes, and the first domino is the busy restaurant test. Well, why don't you go through all the dominoes and then we'll come to the first one.
Well, I'll also explain that they're not. We chose dominoes not in the traditional way you play dominoes, but because you line the children's way, where you line the dominoes up and you knock them over. So you know what I mean. So the idea is that if you have a chain of dominoes and you line them all up vertically on its end, if you hit one side, if there's a gap in the domino chain, it stops, doesn't it? So that's why the dominoes in that perspective, you don't get the sale. So you can't skip them. You can't do them in a different order, and they only work next to each other. So obviously there's a gap, etc. So that's why they call the 6 dominoes, because you line them up and you play that. But I don't know actually what's that called, the lining the dominoes up. But anyway, that's where it came from. And there's 6 dominoes, and I'm going to say them very quickly one way. I'm going to say them backwards because this is how they work together. So I'll go through them forwards, and then I'll come back. So the first one is, do we pass the busy restaurant test? That's what we're going to talk about today. First one, do we pass the busy restaurant test? The second one is navigational flow. Can I find the right product? The third one is job to be done. The fourth one is anxiety. Do I have anxieties? The fifth one is trust and credibility. And the final one is reason to act now. So they're the 6. I'm going to go backwards because it explains why we put them into a domino effect. So the last domino is a reason to act now. So they don't care. They won't be bothered about a reason to act now if we haven't demonstrated trust and credibility. They won't be bothered about have we demonstrated trust and credibility if we haven't resolved their anxieties, like is it going to arrive? What's the warranty period? They won't care about solving anxieties if we haven't demonstrated the job to be done, like they want the product in the first place. They won't care about the job to be done if they can't find the product, which is the navigational flow. They don't care about trying to find the right product if we haven't positioned the brand and passed the busy restaurant test. Does that make sense? You're going backwards.
Yeah.
You can't skip them. So, the extreme example of the dominoes is, what you just said, you led with there, that sometimes that you see at the top of people's e-commerce brands, the free delivery over £50. And that is irrelevant if you haven't positioned and passed the busy restaurant test, help them find the right product, generated the job to be done, and you've gone straight into one of the anxieties, or even it's possibly even the further one down, which is the actual reason to buy the offer architecture. And so a lot of the time, I'll just say one general thing too. Mark and I talk a lot about offer architecture and giving people reason to act now, but to make it very clear, that's the last domino. The last domino of the 6 is the reason to act now, which we often play with the offer architecture. Now, they're only bothered about an offer if you've done all the other 5 dominoes before it. Like, they're not going to take an offer if they don't believe there's trust, credibility, reduce anxiety, job to be done, navigational flow, and position the brand. So that's why it frames it really, really well, and hence why it's called the 6 dominoes of e-commerce.
Yeah, I think the offer architecture will only work if you've built up the dominoes. You're kind of milking the value you've built up in the prior chain. So like the faster the dominoes are moving over, the faster the bigger the sale is going to be at the end of it, or the more people are going to convert through it. So it's the efficiency of the process. So the busy restaurant test. Yeah, the busy restaurant test. I mean, we came up
your
with this.
analogy. It's a lovely analogy, and you can tell it because obviously, what the hell does a busy restaurant test? But I'm pretty sure it was you. I mean, sometimes, like all these things, I steal these ideas from you and then tell them so many times that I think it's actually my idea, and tell you these stories back.
Who knows? I mean, I think people have used the metaphor before, but when I first started to use it was when I was younger with my then girlfriend, now wife. We were traveling around Thailand, and we would always go to dinner early because we always ate early. And we found that whatever restaurant we picked, it would then fill up with other people because we were in it. Now, I think now we're older, it's the opposite. When we go to a restaurant, it empties out. But basically, it was because, and we used to sit in the front of the restaurant, and when people then came to see what restaurant, they would pick one that had other people in it. They went, oh, that one's got some people in it. That must be good. I'm going to go into it. And you see that, I mean, people kind of abuse this fact that, when you do those shows and they have the exhibitions, and it's one of those vegetable choppers, and you can chop the vegetables millions of times, and it's very efficient. And our father falls for this every single time. And they have what's called ringers, who, when the demonstration is finished, they have 2 or 3 people who are paid to come and buy. And it makes the store look like a busy restaurant. It makes the store look busy. And effectively, there's a certain energy of an e-commerce site, and you can just tell whether this site, and it's almost a subtle thing that you pick up. You could just tell whether this store is one that does sales or whether it doesn't do a lot of sales. And if your store looks like one that doesn't do a lot of sales, then you're going to have that, I guess, the quiet restaurant test, which is effectively people don't want to go into the restaurant.
Let's just ask people now listening to this to just for a moment, don't close your eyes if you're driving or running, but just take a moment to just think about 2 scenarios. You are in a foreign city, you're in Paris, and you're walking down the high street with your partner, and you're trying to find somewhere to eat. You see 2 restaurants in front of you. One is completely empty, and the other restaurant is nicely busy. And at this point, you don't know anything about the prices. You don't know anything about the food. You don't even know what type of menu it is. But you just see one restaurant that's nicely full and one restaurant that's empty. Which restaurant do you want to eat at? And 99% of the time, when I ask that question when I'm speaking, because I always ask that question, people always say, well, of course I want to eat in the restaurant that's really busy. And it's very interesting because within a nanosecond of seeing those 2 restaurants, you've made a decision about what you perceive is the best restaurant. Within a nanosecond. You don't know anything about the price or the quality of the food or anything. You just perceive them because there's people there. It must be better because that is a validation and it's part of the trust and credibility. Now that process happens incredibly quickly in an e-commerce website. Within a nanosecond, that decision is happening, and it is a war on preventing them going back to Google or back to Meta or back to TikTok or wherever they've come from. And it happens very, very, very quickly. And that is what's called passing the business restaurant test for the e-commerce. So it's framing the e-commerce business in a very, very, very short space of time that does really answer the following question. Should I invest my time here? Should I invest my time on this e-commerce store? Am I going to find what I need? And they do it very, very quickly. So it's the tip of the iceberg And it leans into some of the other dominoes, which is job to be done, anxiety, or trust and credibility. Now, the default, I would say, of the busy restaurant test, the default is massive amount of quick social proof. That's the default. So if you don't know what your busy restaurant test should be, you fall back to something like 44,000 reviews, trading for 25 years, 30,000 orders shipped. You fall back to just a number. You're trying to show that there's instant evidence that lots of other people have benefited from it and they love it. That's the fallback. It doesn't always have to be that, because sometimes the busy restaurant test can be the job to be done. So it could be something like, if let's say you're selling replacement fridge hinges and you need it really quickly, the busy restaurant could be always in stock, always next day. You know, that could be an example of a busy restaurant test that you basically say, I'm in the right place. So you're leading into some of the other dominoes, but like the default would be showing instantly that there's evidence that there's other people in the restaurant. You know, generally very quickly.
And also making more, like a lot of, I was working at website Australia. I'm working on it at the moment. He's doing a couple of million. And what he got was he'd only got 315 reviews, and he'd only got 315 reviews because he'd switched review platforms. And I think a total, actually he got 500, but he hadn't changed it on the website. But he's actually shipped thousands of orders. So if you've got a low review score, like not a low review score, if you've got like at least you need to have like about 4 out of 5, 4.5 out of 5 really and above to be credible. If you've got low numbers of reviews, you're better putting that next to the amount of orders you've shipped, because then it sounds more impressive. And that's really, I mean, it's not a cheat, because effectively, yes, you have shipped 3,000 orders, and of those 3,000, some of them chose to review you, and they gave you a score on average of 4.5 out of 5. So you're not doing anything wrong. You're actually, but it's much more of a busy restaurant than saying 315 reviews, 4.5 out of 5.
It's not enough. And I think anything less than 1,000 reviews, I would tend to say hide them. I think they can do more damage, actually.
Yeah, but having said that, when we did start that startup, the demo store, just putting some reviews on did make a big difference. Like even though we hadn't got any reviews at the beginning.
No, but what we didn't do is we didn't say 48 reviews.
No,
we didn't do anything like that. We just
cherry picked the reviews that we got from the first customers. Yeah.
Which is a much better way of doing it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the opposite of the busy restaurant, which you see on a lot of sites, is like, you know, things like be the first to review this product, or you know, like reviews and then just having 0 reviews on things like that, and like or having no reviews at all on the product page. Like you surely, even if it's just some cherry picked testimonials put on the page, it's better than
nothing. The other mistake as well, just before I forget, is that I remember we were working with one of the UK's, the UK's biggest online fishmongers.
Oh yeah.
And one of the things that happened is on the homepage, on the desktop, they'd got a great big banner that was saying, voted UK's most favourite online fishmonger. You know, rated, you know, 55,000 reviews or whatever. It was a great statement, very clear, very prominent. Damn, they really passed the busy restaurant test. Except that 75% or 3/4 of their traffic, can't remember the exact numbers, but like 3/4 of their traffic landed on the product page on the mobile, and it was nowhere to be seen. No positioning, definitely don't pass the busy restaurant test. And even on the mobile homepage, that message had gone. So they got it on the desktop, but that obviously wasn't where people started their journey. They started on mobile product page, and it was nowhere to be seen. So it has to be throughout. So you've got to have it continually.
Where they land, isn't it? It's like having a restaurant that's got multiple entry points to it, a physical restaurant, and you put all the things at the front on the front desk, but you've got another busy street behind you where you've got a door and people come in through that door, and you're not telling them anything. They can't see how busy the restaurant is.
And I suppose just to clarify what this physically is, it can be as simple as a bar at the top of the website, or a bar that's underneath the header, or underneath where the USPs are, or just high up, so that they can see it above the fold. Literally a horizontal bar that's got a positioning statement that is saying something like 10,000 orders shipped, rated 4.5 out of 5. Something as simple as that, that's high up, that they can see, like a little horizontal bar, is all that we're talking about. We're not talking about doing anything completely crazy. It's just a bar or a strap line even under the logo. It's something as simple and subtle as that. And that's one of the first things that when we do our e-commerce brands and we're trying to scale others, or it's our own brands, the first thing we'll look at is how we're going to position this brand and what's our busy restaurant test, and how we're going to show that's what we've done. And it literally is that little bar right at the top.
And traditionally we don't lean into those little widgets to say Ian in Manchester has just bought this product, or there are 14 people looking at this product, and things like that. Well, I think they have their place.
Well, they have their place, but that's the last domino, because they work very effectively for people like Booking.com or Hotels.com or the flights, when you're trying to promote scarcity and it says there's only one room left and there's 17 people looking at this. They're brilliant for scarcity, which is the last domino. Whereas
I think you've got to be very careful with scarcity. You've got to be very careful because people are very skeptical of it. And I think you can do it with stock. You can say low stock, but only if it's on 10% of the products. You can't do it on every. You see these Shopify stores that have put every single plugin on under the sun, or extension under the sun, and you've got 4 products left, only 2 things, 20 people looking at this product, and David's just bought this product in Manchester, and it's like they're just not helping. When we're talking about busy restaurant tests, we're talking about subtle hints that actually show the website is a popular choice for the problem that they've got, or their aspiration that they've got to fix. And over 50,000 orders shipped, or you can even do it with an authority quote. If you've got an authority quote from, that company, that Proper Cloth we talked about, they've got that authority quote from GQ magazine about 50 years ago, and they're still using it. No, not 50 years ago, but a long time ago. And if it makes you think if GQ is talking about their shirts being popular, then this must be a busy restaurant, because it's a bit like going to those famous restaurants in London, like the Ivy, and it's got all the celebrities in it. It's like the ultimate busy restaurant test, isn't it? Because it's not only busy, but it's busy full of people that you aspire to be like, or if you want to be a celebrity. Not that I do, but that's kind of effectively what we're saying. The busy restaurant test is effectively answering the question, am I in the right place? And will I get a good outcome when I go here? I think there's nothing more off-putting than seeing an empty restaurant on a busy Saturday night when it should be busy. You just think, what's happening?
You're making the job so much harder for yourself. That restaurant that's completely empty. If you do find yourself, in there, you're really not feeling like you're in the right place. You're really not sure. To be honest, I've just not got a good vibe from this. Food's going to be crap. I don't even know what's on the menu. I don't care. I just want to get out. I
used to work in restaurants when I was a student, and some of the restaurants, they would start the night with their family sitting in the window eating, and their family just getting their family sitting in the window and eating. Everybody thought the restaurant had got some customers in it, and it would start it off. So even if you've got, this is talking about startup sites with nothing. If you've got nothing, get some friends and family to at least review the products and sell them something, give them a discount, get them to say something about it, because you just don't want to be that kind of nobody wants to think that they're buying from the website the first time. And weird as it is, even if you sold thousands and thousands of products, people can still get that effect. When we've had websites, and gone on to live chat and manned live chat for a couple of weeks just to get a feel for what we might want to improve on the site. And even established sites, some people have asked me, is this a real company? Is this a legitimate company? And so the level of anxiety about this goes a lot higher than you expect. And there's a lot more you need to do to show you're a busy restaurant than you think. Just because you're sitting there in your big office, in your big head office, and you've got loads of staff and people are running around and you've got a big warehouse and stuff, doesn't mean that people on the website automatically, telepathically can work that out. They don't know what your business looks like.
I go a bit further with it. I think completely. I think, I would say generally, okay, let's take it one step further. If you do go into that empty restaurant and the head chef comes over to you and says, it starts talking to you and you say, look, is your food any good? And he goes, yeah, it's amazing, it's incredible. You just don't believe him because there's no one in the restaurant. I don't care how good you think your food is. There's no one here, so I do not believe you. So any statements that you're making around delivery or, price, you just don't believe. It's watered down because you haven't positioned yourself properly. And the truth of it is, most people, most e-commerce brands, you like, unless you're obviously in the elite and you're a big player, people have never heard of you. People have never heard of you. They don't know who you are. And you're potentially very precious about your brand and you think that, it looks amazing and it's great. But you have to remember that people don't give a damn about you and your business. And they're seeing at you from within a nanosecond. They've got to make a split decision. Because guess what? They're going to go back to Google. And they're going to go and click on someone else's ad, Google Shopping or Meta or Instagram, wherever they come from. So it's the simple. It's 101. It's absolute 101 of e-commerce, and it's the easiest. And
also, the business owner is often they're too close. It's so close to the business and a lot of the time, the e-commerce business is an extension of your own ego. It's your baby. It's how it represents. And you go, well, I wouldn't want to see that. So I wouldn't buy from that. But a lot of the time, you're not selling to yourself. Your customer is not you. They're not people who go up and set up a website, go up and set a business. They're entrepreneurs. I think something like 8% of the population. So it's very different than everybody else. And so you have to talk to the everyman or the everywoman that is coming to the site to buy, and that's what they're looking for. And so it's about kind of capitulating that. The other one we see a lot, which works well, and running Google Ads as well. Like you see these, the largest range of something. So like in B2B or something like that, like, the largest range of home audio equipment or something like that. Like that works. That actually ticks the busy restaurant test because people go, well, if they've got the largest range, they've got the largest warehouse. There's no way they would have got to that size if they weren't selling a lot of stuff. Because you just can't rock up in the industry and just have the largest range. It's an establishment. You're an established business, and therefore it's where people go to buy. And so
emotionally,
that works.
And emotionally, what a consumer would think if they saw that for the first time, if it said the largest range of audio-visual equipment in the UK, what the consumer thinks is, well, great, I'm bound to find what I want here. I'm going to stick around. I'm going to go and have a look.
See, that's slightly different than actually a restaurant, because you don't go to the restaurant with the biggest menu. I think it's like going to, it depends on what you want. So if you're going to a restaurant for an evening meal, it's more like going to a women's clothes shop. You don't want to have if you go to a women's clothes shop and you're looking for something special for a wedding or something like that, it wouldn't work if you said, we've got the largest range of women's clothes wear in the UK. Or the USA, it would put you off because you think, bloody hell, I'm never going to be able to find what I want. But it would work if you're a supermarket. If you're a supermarket, we've got the largest range of produce in New Zealand, for example. You go to the supermarket. So sometimes it would work and sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah. Well, I'll say, I think actually the busy restaurant test, it takes its cues from some of the dominoes that are further on, which really is the job to be done in the anxiety. It starts to take shape as you get in. But I think the default is is essentially, I mean, the most classic one you alluded to at the start was the default one is that, the positioning or the busy restaurant test framework of an ecom brand is free delivery over 50 quid. And when you think about that, I mean, it's ludicrous, isn't it? It would be like having what would be the example? If you had a restaurant, that would almost be your name of the shop, the rename of the restaurant,
I don't know.
It's
I can't
not
give you an
why
example because I
people
wasn't
would
listening to
buy
what
in
you
the
said.
first place. You missed that.
Yes. I just left it. So,
Do you want me to say again or no?
was it interesting?
You drifted off.
I did. I need my cup of tea. That's what I need.
This is what it was. No, I was just saying that that one of the mistakes people make is that at the top of the website, their positioning, which was laugh. The positioning is free delivery over 50 quid. And it's like that's how they're framing your business, And it's like it's obviously not why people buy, And it's ridiculous. It's like that's the the positioning of the brand is free delivery over 50 quid.
Like if you're Tesco's and people know Tesco's and they're buying, and then you are an online delivery site for Tesco's. Yes, you would talk about delivery. You'd lead with delivery because that's the main anxiety. They go, how much is it going to cost to get it delivered? That's what they want. So that makes sense there, but it doesn't make sense for like a wedding dress shop that I was talking about before. It's like, I don't care how much it is to get delivered. I don't know whether you've got my dress yet. And so I think another thing we did a lot last year, which was really useful, was tagline testing. It's a tagline under the logo. And I think it's not always the case that the tagline will be the busy restaurant test. I think that sometimes it's more about the positioning under the tagline that works. But that's not to say if you're in that kind of industry where a busy restaurant is the most important because people aren't sure about where to buy from, the busy restaurant test could be incorporated into your tagline. So like if you are in one of those ones with the largest range in the UK of so-and-so, that could become your tagline. That would probably work in that case. But if you're like a bedding site, probably leading with the fact that you sold to 10,000 people, it's probably not as good as 5-star luxury comfort, for example, which is more of a positioning thing. So I think it kind of starts to bleed into the next domino quite quickly because effectively people make that decision to say whether they're on the site very quickly. They first of all, is this a busy restaurant test and am I in the right place? So
should I invest my time here? That's the question.
And those two questions is just like, does this look like a place that I would buy from? Is kind of what they're also asking. So, they're looking to see whether the restaurant's busy, but they're also looking to see whether the people in the restaurant are like them. So if you go to walking down the street in London, and you're me and my wife, we are, late 40s, and we see a restaurant full of absolute like young kids, like 18, 17-year-olds eating in that restaurant. We're probably not going to want to go into that restaurant, even though it's busy, because it's not the restaurant for us, because it's going to be loud and they're going to be talking rubbish, and we don't like children. No, I'm joking. But we would be looking for something, and if we went to a restaurant and we weren't particularly dressed that well, and we looked in a restaurant and everybody was really, really well dressed and like really like suited and booted and looked glamorous, that might also put us off because we were like maybe out for a casual evening. So it's the busy restaurant test is the first layer of it. And the second layer of it is it busy with people like me?
Yeah.
In the place that I want to get to, and that's when you start to like the branding of it and the testimonials that you bring out and the imagery that you bring out will start to show people whether or not that is the right restaurant for them, and that's got to be done above the fold.
Yeah, well, it does, but that's where you start talking about the brand positioning. You start talking about the feel of the brand and how it feels and what imagery you're using. And actually, the other thing that we often talked about was, how a huge brand. One of the mistakes people often make in e-commerce is they look at the biggest brand in their space, like let's say the fashion brand, and they go and look at Prada or some ridiculous, or even Ralph Lauren. They look at the Ralph Lauren the site, look at Prada, and they go, oh, look at this, it's very minimalist. It's just got an image here. It's got no positioning statements at all. It's just very clean, it's very modern, and and so they copy it, and then it obviously doesn't work, because what they don't realize is that there is a huge amount of brand positioning that's already happened for Ralph Lauren and Prada and all the other brands before you even come to the site. So you're preconditioned to know. And the problem is, if you
restaurant,
it's a busy restaurant, exactly, and probably supported by the $100 million marketing campaign that they've had as sponsoring all the events. Essentially, we're saying is that that would be like us. The example we used to give is that we came up with the Hammersley Brothers perfume, and we would copy the Sauvage ad with Johnny Depp, and it was me and you sat on this sofa. Actually, I think we used to do this as a joke, and it would be like, how ridiculous would that be?
Look at how, just thought at this. Look at how fashion labels launch their clothes. They get women to dress up, they put them on a runway, and they walk up and down the runway, and men, of course, and they put a crowd of people watching that clothes, and they get them to clap, and they get them to say how amazing it all was. That is a busy restaurant. It's the mock-up of a busy restaurant. And then they make people see that. They look across all the magazines, and then they put it into like behind the scenes footage and all that kind of stuff. And then by the time people get to the store, they've already seen that people are raving fans about this new collection. So it's done. So if you turn up to your clothing store and you're just trying to do the last part of it, it's like that's the domino, isn't it, for them? The domino is the busy restaurant. They create the busy restaurant with a fashion show. And they do an offer. They do offers at Christmas and January sales and stuff like that. Those offers wouldn't work as well had they not done the domino earlier in the year of getting people to want to buy.
Well, essentially, they've warmed them up, and I'll just say something else as well. Is that the journey from 0 to 10 million is very, very different from a 10 to 50 million, or So there's a website called Wayback Machine. I think it still works. It's called Wayback Machine, and we used to, for fun, go back to when an e-commerce brand started, and we'd look at the positioning. So I remember we did this with ASOS. And we went back, so you look at ASOS' site now, and you go, okay, well they've got they stripped it back, and they've got this. And the other thing we did it with Made as well, and we'd look back at what their websites look like, in the first year or two of their growth, because you can do that Wayback Machine. You can look at the positioning, and it's so different. I think Made, obviously Made.com, unfortunately, has obviously gone into administration last year. So it's not a great example, but they were very successful.
But let's talk to that about Made.
Yeah.
Because when we used to go back at Made, we looked at it and it had a very clear reason to buy right at the beginning. And it started off right at the beginning of basically buy your sofa direct and get your sofa basically half price. It was
cut out the middleman.
Yeah.
And save. That was there. And it was not just subtly woven into the narrative. It was the full USP positioning statement. It was everywhere, above the fold, on all the pages, repeated many, many times over. That is what they stood for. It was buy direct from the source, cut out the middleman. That's what it was.
And then as they got bigger, they dropped that messaging. Yeah. And they just became Made.com. Maybe that was a mistake.
Well, what happened is that you get a lot of e-com brands copying Made.com site, but without any of the positioning that Made.com had at the start. We got them to the point that they became an iconic brand that people wanted to emulate.
I think also though, that cutting out the middleman, it was the start of the internet. Buying sofas online hadn't been done.
Yeah.
And that was no longer their competitive advantage. There was loads of other people you could buy sofas online.
It wasn't enough.
So it wasn't enough. It's to say, cut out the direct middleman, buy a sofa online. And it's like, well, there's thousands of other people doing exactly the same same now. So, but I don't think they replaced it with anything apart from, we've got really nice looking sofas and we are made.com, so you should buy from us. And like, I don't necessarily think that was the reason they went into receivership. I think they went into receivership due to the fact that they were mostly shipping air in the containers, and shipping air is, sofas predominantly air. First of all, they're funny shapes, and also the cushions are full of air, and you're not getting much in the container compared to bedding, which is like folded and it's like full of bedding. But maybe there were some mistakes made along the way, a little bit of a positioning, because they didn't have necessarily a strong positioning to why you would buy from Made rather than anybody else after a while, apart from the brand.
I think the it's part of the maturity of a brand, though, that as you increase your average order value, and you wanted to grow and want to go and reach more new markets, you have to lean into some of the Dominoes more. It isn't enough, and I think obviously we'll talk about the Dominoes next time, but the job to be done and the anxiety are key things you've got to address, which also leads into the first.
I know that since Made went bankrupt, you actually spent time. You actually worked with the CEO of Made. Did she actually allude to what she thought it was? Or maybe you've got to be careful. You can't say what you think.
Well, probably do have to be careful, yes. But I think it's fairly common knowledge that, unfortunately, the prices of the shipping containers affected them. Like you said, they were shipping air, so they would, let's say they had like $20,000 worth of product in one shipping container. And so if that shipping container went, the cost of it went from, times by 7, wasn't it? It would tenfold increase the price of getting a container over. The shipping cost just literally went tenfold. And whereas, like bedding, like you say, we could fit $200,000, $250,000 of bedding in one container. They could only fit $20,000 of stock in their container. So if the shipping container prices went up by tenfold, it affected their margins hugely. And
did that affect I mean, there's other sofa people like DFS and people like that. Like, did they?
Well, it affected everybody, and yes, it did. And the other problem was that a lot of the containers got stuck. So not only were the shipping containers 10 times more expensive to come over, but they got stuck, and a lot of people who bought sofas started to cancel their orders. So there was a lot of pre-orders sofas sold. A lot of pre-orders, so people would buy it and it would be coming and it would be like, yeah, you'd be waiting for 3 weeks. But of course, it got stuck. They obviously had the Suez Canal issue, the boat got stuck, and obviously COVID was shutting down the ports in the different places around the world.
They were getting hammered, like those brands, on customer support. I mean, if you looked at people like Cox and Cox during that time, and Cox and Cox also went into receivership, they were their reviews. It was like a bloodfest.
Yeah,
wasn't it?
It was just... it was like 1 out of 5. It was absolutely like absolutely slammed, bad, bang, 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 bang. And essentially what happened is people pulled the deposits away, so they cancelled their orders. And so then they simply ran out of cash. Made.com simply ran out of cash. The cash flows went, and it wasn't able to sustain two things that happened at the same time. Containers went up 10, price of container, shipping containers went up 10 times. And also the lead times increased massively because all the products got stuck because no one could get any containers and yada, yada, yada. And people cancelled their orders and they just didn't have the cash.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I took you off topic there. We're supposed to be talking about busy restaurants. But
it's a good, interesting
I
story.
thought it was interesting. Yeah. And so I guess that leads us on to the next podcast next week, which will be about, I've forgotten what they are next. Tell me what the next Dominoes are.
Navigational flow, helping you find the right product.
Okay. That sounds good.
That's the second one.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you.
Cheerio. Enjoy your blue lights and your tanned face and your beautiful mellow voice.
What else can I get? Smooth. Disco lights.
You should probably put some better clothes on.
That's a black t-shirt. What else do you want?
Yes,
This, I mean, this could be like Dior. You wouldn't know. I'm getting a haircut later today. Next week, have a new haircut.
Is that wise? You're not going to have any left.
That's true, but you still have to get it cut.
All
right.
God. All right, let me go to bed now. I'm tired.
Yeah.
Cheerio.
Bye.